You know, of all places I expect to go to, especially in the month of January, the last place I actually expected was going to Vietnam. Now, that's kind of ironic coming to the fact that I spent a whole month in Vietnam, but trust me when I say this, I didn't plan to go to Vietnam, but my experience in Vietnam was one of my favorite things I've ever done. And one of my favorite places to ever go to in the first place. Now, the first thing is like, why was I in Vietnam? And the answer to that is I was originally there for a business trip. I had a free flight to Da Nang and a free flight back from Vietnam. And I wasn't exactly sure like what to do. So when I originally booked the flight, I wasn't really looking forward to it because I just came back traveling from like Turkey, Europe, like Portugal, Barcelona, and I booked at that time and I felt really exhausted and really burnt out from traveling. But a month before my trip, I started feeling really, really excited, and I actually extended my trip beyond just 1 week to a whole 3 weeks. And then my flight got delayed even further because of a snowstorm. So I ended up staying like over 3 weeks in Vietnam. The three cities I stayed at was the city of Da Nang, the city of Vinh, and the city of Saigon. Each city, even though it is Vietnam, was a very different experience. We have like Da Nang, which is a very like beachy, resorty, relaxing, like California, Florida type vibe. We have Vinh, which is a lot more like inner city, a lot more less dense, a lot more like work oriented, kind of like a Chicago vibe. I've never been to Chicago, but that's my guess. But then we have the major city, Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City, which had a ton of people. The equivalent would be like New York City, but even bigger. It was such a densely populated city. But I think in my experience there, each and every place in Vietnam was like truly such a breathtaking experience. And one thing I want to reference to is like going before Tet, which is like the Vietnamese like Lunar New Year, made it a really, really festive week. Everyone was so excited. Everyone was excited to be off. The holiday season was coming up, and it just was such a like energizing time to go. When I first flew to Vietnam, I was there just for business reasons. I was just for work reasons, and I was doing work. But after that was done in Da Nang, I spent some time exploring the shopping in Da Nang, going around to the beach and relaxing on the beach, and I just love the experience of being in Vietnam fundamentally because everything is like so cheap. I could comfortably spend a meal for under $1 too. Like we would get pho for the equivalent of like $1, like $1. We would get a banh mi, which is like a Vietnamese sandwich, for the equivalent of 70 cents, 80 cents, and like luxury meals cost like $10. Like you can get a really, really fancy meal for like $5 to $10. Like in my perspective, as long as it wasn't built for Westerners, food in Vietnam was just like amazing, cheap, and one thing I really learned to love was like spending money because like I'm sure a lot of people in the States like we have like a budget and we kind of like spend reasonably, but in Vietnam I felt like as though like no matter how much money I spent, I wouldn't like hit my limits. I could keep spending again and again, and I just like wasn't making a dent in my bank. That's an exaggeration, but it just felt like everything was so affordable, so cheap, where I could finally be able to splurge on things like, for example, go shopping for expensive clothes, or do treatments, or take an Uber or like Grab or an Uber equivalent every single day, multiple times, because it was so cheap. So I spent time first in Da Nang, and over there I did a couple of things like go to the beach, go shopping, and as a whole, I think the first thing I'd recommend in Da Nang is that like it's not known for any major thing except beaches, and I would fully embrace that fundamentally. They're really nice bars, really nice beaches, and a really nice like chill vibe. Just like sit by the beach and relax. If you love water, if you love the ocean, if you love beaches, like you should definitely go to Da Nang. It's a little slower, a little more peaceful, and it really depends on like what your vibe is. My equivalent is like, oh, if you love California, you would love Da Nang, and if you love New York City, you would love Saigon. That was my experience in Da Nang. Overall, like, I wish I spent a bit more time there, and I wish I could stay there for a long period of time as well. And I think one day I will go back, and I'm excited to go back one day. But then after Da Nang, I decided to go teach English in a city called Vinh. So Vinh is a city around 9 hours north of Da Nang via a train. It's around 200 kilometers north as well. And that city was a very unique experience because that was the first city in Vietnam, and the only city in Vietnam that I've experienced where you truly could not get by with Google Translate. People in Da Nang and people in Saigon could kind of communicate, and you can kind of get by via English. Of course, English is a little broken or a little like fractured, but when I was in the city of Vinh, like some people just didn't know English at all, and like that's fine, but it was a little hard to communicate because funny enough, like I ran out of data when I was in Vietnam, so it was really, really slow and really, really hard to connect to data. But the city of Vinh was very peaceful and quiet in the sense that like I felt that I had like a lot less to do. I originally went there to teach English, and I taught English in high school for around a week. They were between the ages of 10 to 12, so a bit of a younger crowd, but not like incredibly young. And I think culturally, I was teaching in a really rural area.
Mouse.
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 Mouse. Good job, good job.
Here.
Head.
Head.
Oh, good. Head.
Head.
Nice.
And car. car.
So around like 40 minutes west, like the suburban equivalent. But it was so rural, so like in the middle of nowhere, where my hotel had no Wi-Fi. I was surrounded by like cows and chickens. The roads had no lights. The infrastructure was just like not there yet. And basically like after 6 p.m. when it got dark, like I just could not go out anywhere because like I couldn't travel anywhere. I needed a car or I needed a bike and I just didn't have a bike. And it was so rural where calling an Uber or calling a Grab equivalent didn't work because I was so far away. One thing I do think I love about teaching is that like the kids in Vietnam, especially Vin, are a little wild, but they're really really thoughtful. I think there's a big bucket of people where they have they are so talented and they're so hardworking, and I hope to see them like succeed and thrive in the future. But living on a farm was a very unique experience because for the first time like I felt like I could like slow down and go my own pace. Now this isn't like a Vietnam special, but being in a culture where people really embrace like taking your time and people really embrace this community outside and people really embrace just chatting with people on the street, I think really took a foothold on me because in my experience living in Boston or even New York City, but mainly Boston, people just like aren't that friendly. Like people keep to themselves mainly because it's culturally respectful to like not just like be really really like nosy. But when you're in Vietnam, like everyone is on the streets, everyone's like howling, everyone's like moving around, and there's so much chaos on the street. And originally I was so overwhelmed. It's like quite a scary feeling, especially crossing the street. But as I come back to Boston, coming back from a weather from 80 degrees Fahrenheit to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, I really, really miss like the culture of being able to just like chat and just like you just never know what's gonna happen next, truly. But as a whole, like people in Vin were really, really friendly. Though I don't know if I'd recommend it as a vacation spot, and it's more as a like work spot that people in Vietnam work at. But it is like on the way north. So there are a lot of people that like travel through Laos and go backpacking through Laos that stop by the area. But it really depends like what you're looking for it too. I think a lot of people also go even further north to Hanoi. That city I haven't been to yet, but I'm sure in the future I will. Now, my favorite city that I really, really enjoyed in Vietnam was Saigon slash Ho Chi Minh City. It was the best city I've ever been to because things were so affordable. People were so nice. It was so chaotic. I could literally buy everything without breaking the bank. And there's so many things to do. So even the first day, I had a couple of things like check a coffee shop, get an egg coffee. I took an egg coffee making class actually, where I made my own like Vietnamese coffee. And one thing I loved doing there was shopping. Something I bought was like a tailored suit. I actually bought 2 tailored suits at a relatively affordable price. And most of the clothes I got, including the ones I'm wearing right now, I bought at a pretty cheap price of like $5 to $10 a piece, which in Vietnam standards isn't that low. But for me, like when pieces of clothing cost like easily $40, $50 a piece, it felt really, really cheap. I do regret not shopping more because I went there with 1 filled suitcase and I came back with 3. And I wish I came back with like 3.5 or 4 suitcases of clothes. But if you have anything that you want to buy, if you have any accessories, any shoes, any clothes that you plan to buy, I would fully recommend waiting to be in Vietnam and then buying it there, especially Saigon, because even though like Saigon is a major city, it is like more expensive than other areas of Vietnam, but proportionally it's still incredibly cheap compared to these. And I think the broad exposure of different industries and the big density of people make it a relatively affordable thing. And just like a lot of other cities, like there are certain areas of Saigon, Ho Chi Minh, like in the center districts or the district near the airport, that are a lot more expensive. And as you incrementally go further and further, it does become like more rural and becomes more affordable too. I had a lot of friends that like were surviving in Vietnam, paying like $400 a month, $300 a month for a relatively nice apartment. I was looking at Airbnbs earlier today too, and I could easily get a 1 bedroom, 1 bath for $500 a month, $600 a month in Vietnam. And then if I was to sign a long-term lease, I can easily get it for like $250, $300 a month in Vietnam. So, and in Saigon. So I think if I ever move to Asia in the future, I think having a short-term lease in Vietnam would be something that I think a lot about. It's something that I actually am thinking about right now because as I'm in such cold weather and with people that don't really feel as friendly, I'm like super nostalgic of like how amazing it felt like in Vietnam when everyone was super super friendly. Yeah, I think even though I wasn't planning to go to Vietnam, I think I fully recommend everyone to go and everyone to try it because number one, it won't break the bank minus the flight, depending on where you're from. But it is relatively affordable and it is so incredibly fun because people there are so welcoming, so kind, and there's literally so much you can do at an affordable price. Whereas like if you want to enjoy experiences in the US or even in parts of Europe, it's not cheap. But in Vietnam, you can truly do it. And again, and if you really like the experience, you can subscribe to these things. Like you can affordably do it. You can take lessons, you can take classes, and just like any major city, there is so much to try and so much to do. Another thing I want to mention is that like there are so many expat communities and so many travelers in Vietnam. So what I did before I went to Saigon is I posted a TikTok like, oh, is anyone going to be in Saigon? Is anyone going to be Ho Chi Minh City over the next week in January? And surprisingly, like 30, 40 people commented. And then like I created a group chat of like 30, 40 people on Instagram. And they're all like relatively friendly too. And I think, of course, like it may feel lonely for the first couple days, but just like every place you move to, every place you get to, like you will get just eventually. And I just love the food there, love the culture, love the vibes, and love everything that you can do and affordably do in Vietnam. One more thing is that like it's super nice to know a local or to have friends that have lived there for a while to take you to good places. If you just rely on like TikTok and Google Maps, you will get a relatively good bucket of places to go to. But I went to a couple like Michelin recommended places that were delicious, and then my friends took me to a lot of like local stores and shops where if I was to go alone, I'd be quite afraid and quite hesitant to go into those stores, check them out, dive into them. But going there with a local or with their friends that have been to Vietnam for a while, they're able to take me to such amazing spots. They're able to take me to really like the hole in the walls that I think look a little suspicious on the outside, but they surprisingly loved it. And I'm so jealous of them because they're able to stay there for long periods of time and eat everything there affordably. So yeah, if you go to Vietnam, I think the one thing I'd recommend so much you can shop in Vietnam, and I think everyone should just try it at once. I didn't intend to go. I didn't plan to go to Vietnam, but after going to Vietnam, I am certain I will go back, and I'm certain that like the people there are so friendly, and I hope whenever I go back, things don't change because I love my experiences, and I hope it's still good in the future.